A CGM or a continuous glucose monitor is a coin-sized device that sticks to your skin and gives you blood glucose readings whenever you bring a reader next to it. It's typically used by diabetics to measure their blood glucose level as it varies during the day. But I'm not diabetic, in fact far from it. I live a pretty active and healthy lifestyle. I pursue endurance events such as long distance running and cycling. And recently I've gotten into strength training for adding some muscle as well. So in this video I wanted to take some time and share with you how a CGM fits into my training and generally in my day as relates to health. So I first heard of a CGM, I believe when I was reading this book called Endure, where experiments were run on an elite and a non-elite marathon runner, where a CGM was applied to them and they saw how their blood glucose levels varied as the run went on and as they consumed carbohydrates as fuel. So for the elite runner, the glucose level was relatively steady, whereas for the non-elite runner, the variation was quite high and I believe there were some spikes in there as well. Then I started following this account called Glucose Goddess on Instagram, where Jessie posts about how her body responds in terms of blood glucose levels to the food that she eats. And in case you're wondering, spikes in blood glucose as you consume food is typically not a good health sign, because having that happen repeatedly over and over a long period of time can lead to health problems and eventually, in most people, diabetes. Technically, diabetes is a disease of insulin resistance, but let's just ignore that for now. Quick word on some oversimplified biology before we move on. When you consume a meal, it is carbohydrates, proteins and fats that enter your bloodstream. One of the things that then happens is your pancreas secretes insulin, which tells the body to take up that excess and store it into your body. Carbohydrate gets stored as glycogen in your liver and muscles, and the one that everybody is familiar with, fat storage and fat accumulation, also happens. So this is why when you consume a meal, your blood glucose goes up and then it comes back down. You have your friend insulin to thank for this. On the other hand, when you're exercising, even if it's a simple walk, your muscles use up energy, and unless something is available from a previous meal that you've already eaten, it's the glycogen that gets used up by the muscle. First, locally to the muscle, so if you're walking, your calves would use glycogen stored in the calf muscle, and then eventually more is made available from the liver. Another process called ketosis, which is the usage of fat for energy, also starts at some point, but we'll ignore that for this discussion. This is really oversimplifying matters quite a bit, and of course I'm not a doctor, but with a little bit of basics about how sugar works when you consume food and exercise out of the way, let's get into how a CGM fits into the whole equation and in my day-to-day life. So I use a watch to measure my heart rate, which can lead to a variety of different health metrics about your body. Just the same way as someone measuring their weight would see their weight go down when they started eating healthy or exercising, your heart rate, for example, also goes down when you practice endurance events such as running, cycling, and this is an indicator that you are becoming more fit or more healthy. The CGM is no different. It's a tool I use to measure how my health is doing based on the kinds of food I eat, the exercise I'm doing, stress, sleep, etc. The CGM I use is called the Freestyle Libre, which I bought off of Amazon. I'll post an affiliate link down in the description below, and also a video of this lady who gives an instruction about how you can apply one of these sensors on your body. It's this little coin-sized device that you sort of stamp onto your skin, preferably a fatty part of your skin. So, for me, it's installed right behind my arm. And it doesn't hurt at all when you install it. In fact, if I could liken it to something equivalent to what you would have experienced, it's like wearing a watch. The first time you wear it, you're like, there's something on my wrist, but give it a day or maybe not even that, and you start to, you even forget that it's there. I'll be the first one to tell you that this setup is not cheap. You require one reader and one sensor at a minimum. The sensor's life is about 14 days is what they claim. I've usually found that the adhesive starts to wear off in about 10 days. But the reader can be reused with multiple different sensors. I generally use one of these sensors whenever I'm undertaking a lifestyle change. So for example, now I have started eating in a caloric surplus, which means I'm eating more than I need to. Just with the intention of putting on some muscles, on also strength training for that end. I will get to some of the questions that I had before using a CGM towards the end of the video, but before we do that, let's quickly look at some of the findings I had while using this device. So As I've mentioned before, I use this thing as a tool to measure how my blood sugar is doing based on various different interventions or eating foods, etc. So a couple of the findings are, for example, eating a peanut butter toast has very little impact on my blood sugar, probably because of the fats that exist in the peanut butter. The other finding that I've had is when I exercise on an empty stomach, my blood sugar does rise, probably because all that energy is being metabolized into the blood so that it can be used by the muscle. I measure my blood glucose levels early in the morning just to make sure that my readings haven't escalated as time goes on. And since I've been in a caloric surplus and I eat heavily and I eat early in the morning, my blood glucose levels in the morning have risen by about 5 milligrams per deciliters. Extended fasts, usually more than or about 24 hours, reduce my blood glucose levels, especially towards the tail end of the fast, which is not really surprising. You haven't eaten any sugar the entire time. Pomegranates most likely do increase my blood glucose levels higher than other fruits do. I've also found that eating carbohydrates while running or cycling, etc., doesn't have much of an impact on my glucose levels, which is expected because all of that sugar gets taken up by the muscles immediately. And while I was practicing endurance events, running and such, and I was in a caloric deficit, or I wasn't paying that much attention to how much I was eating, I even tried eating ice cream as a scientific experiment just to see how my body reacts to it. And all that sugar in the ice cream had barely any effect on my blood sugar. I would attribute this to a healthy and active lifestyle, but that is really just a guess at this point. Now, these are just my findings. Your body is different from mine and your results will be different from mine. For example, a very close relative in my family was able to reduce their resting or fasting blood glucose levels by about 100 points by switching to a fibrous vegetable based diet, and for them the blood glucose for them had dropped about 50 points while doing moderate levels of exercise. My point is, regardless of whether someone wants to be healthy or is diabetic, recommending that they try out a CGM is a good way to get a view into how their body responds to the habits that they have, the lifestyle that they have. And if they so choose, they can choose to make interventions towards fixing some of those problems. One point to note though, don't trust the readings of this sensor when you're asleep, because especially when you're lying down, if you're lying down on your side or wherever the sensor is placed, blood flow does reduce to that part of the body, so thereby you would see lower glucose readings. And I saw this the first time that I slept with the sensor on me. So don't trust the readings when you're sleeping. Trust it when you're out of the bed and comfortably been out of the bed for a while. Some of the drawbacks about using a CGM, at least here in India, are that there is no app from Freestyle Libre that lets you read the readings off of the sensor onto your phone. There is an app on Android at least called Glimp, but this thing severely underreports the readings from the sensor sometimes. So the readings from your phone using the Glimp app versus a reader provided by Freestyle Libre, the variations are quite high, and the Glimp readings are lower than what is reported by the reader from Freestyle. Not only does this mean that you can't see and record your data over time on your phone, it also means that you have to manually correlate the exercise you've undertaken, the food you've eaten or not eaten, with the blood glucose readings that you get off of the reader. Now, there are a few companies that give you an ability to read into an app from this sensor that let you then correlate those readings with either activities you've undertaken or some food you've eaten or not eaten, etc. But at least here in India, I don't know of any company that publicly is available and is allowing you to do this yet. So with all that out of the way, let's get to some questions, at least the ones that I had before diving into using a CGM. So here they are. Is there a needle and will it hurt on applying a CGM? Yes, there is a needle, but it doesn't hurt at all. It's some sort of a fibrous needle. It doesn't seem like it's metallic, but I haven't really poked at it to find out, but it doesn't hurt at all. Can you exercise or bathe with it? Yes, I have exercised and bathed with it, and there's no problem at all. Does the pin inside your skin get uncomfortable? No, there is no exaggeration when I say this. It just, you don't feel that it is there. Like I have it installed right now, and my left arm and my right arm, they're I can't tell the difference between any of them. You really cannot tell the difference. Does it hurt when removing the sensor? No, it just feels like you're removing a band-aid or something. You just need to pull it out straight and not twist it in different directions or whatever. What is the accuracy like compared to a glucometer? This is one of those things where the typical standard diabetes check, which used to happen, I guess, in the last decade or somewhere into this decade as well. People prick a finger and then take the blood coming out of that finger and stick it on the strip, and then it will tell you immediately what the readings are. That's a glucometer. I have measured my fasting glucose when using a CGM and using the glucometer, and I've even done blood tests that I do, 4 times in a year, just to get a general sense of where my health is at, hormones, vitamins, things like that. And it has been consistent. The CGM readings have been consistent with all those 2 findings. Okay, so that's all I have for you today. If you think I missed out on anything or you still have some questions regarding the CGM, reach out to me either on Instagram or in the comment section below, and I'll do my best to respond to them. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.